So how much swirl is there to this body of water that considers its pond's residents to be deemed quiet? Can't be that much of a swirl. Um, what are the travel permit arrangements for a mass of water? Is it a visa? Who gets to lord it over bodies of water as their master? And is there a training program that I can sign up for this position? These are the sort of some of the questions that pass through my mind.
Hey, everybody out there, welcome back to another Friday episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and because it is Friday, it is a day devoted to a song that was offered up by one of you out there in the listening audience, which we really do forever appreciate. John and I have discussed this particular offering. I'm familiar with the band a bit more so, I think, than John. So John is going to take the reins for this one as far as the reactor role is concerned. And he's going to go off and listen to a song requested by Matt John 4731. And his suggestion came on, and this is probably a pretty good implication as to who it's going to be, but our Meat Puppets track, Backwater, that we covered in our episode there. And the track that he wants you to check out is also by Meat Puppets. Although, to be fair, Matt offered us up a plethora of options from which I got to choose. And the one that we are going to go with, I thought it kind of fit the motif of Backwater. So we're going to do a song called Whirlpool, which is a really great track by them. And I'd like to hear what John's synopsis is of giving this song a first listen. So John, you've got everything you need, my friend. I'd love to have you go off and listen to this, and I'm sure Matt John 4731 would as well. So please go off, check it out, and come back and let us know what you thought of it.
It's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't really think I was expecting this. You've got this really interesting soaring guitar, I think it is, that's going upwards and rising thermals, like a massive bird, like Condor. Um, Not Condor Man, that was an awful film. But yes, you've got this, and it almost sounds like it's like going toward panpipes territory. It's an interesting sound, and then underneath it, you've got this very 80s guitar. So, it's like an Americanized version of the Edge's work on. Still haven't found what I'm looking for. Yeah, but with the sort of bass with it, it gives a bit more sort of bump to it. Yeah, really interesting. Back a wee bit. Yeah, we're going back. That sounded like a wonderful bag of nonsense. I'm guessing. Yeah, those are some interesting words.
It has permission from its master to visit the lands beyond. And its master allowed it to fly. And so the wind swept the whirlpool across the sky.
Let's just start with something about there was a swirling mass of water that lived in a quiet pond, and it asked permission from its master to visit the lands beyond. So many questions. So many questions. Oh dear. How do you get the gig being the master of swirling masses of water? Is there a training program? I'm interested. And then it got, so that's, different. Cool. Different. The swirling guitar dropped out for this verse bit, and so it was really, the rhythms kept going with this really nice bass and a lot of hi-hat action from the drummer and percussion to keep it going, and the guitar's a bit more sort of, not quite so frenetic with its picking, a few more sort of chords, and then this bit after it, so it allowed it to fly, and the wind swept it across the sky, something like that. But the harmonies are in there as well, and it feels like almost like a old school chorus that narrates a story, like a Greek chorus. It's really nice. It does feel quite old fashioned in a nice way, and absolutely bonkers as well. Okay.
Whirlpool's mother wore a jacket she'd sewn out of dental floss. It was stolen by a monkey that sold it to an albatross.
Yeah, more shenanigans here. I caught jacket dental floss stolen by a monkey and sold to an albatross. I don't know if that's the common route for sort of dental floss jacket smuggling. But they should really clamp down on this sort of thing. Absolute fucking bonkers. I like it. I think that's what he said. Let's just go back a wee bit. It's just such a short song.
Whirlpool's mother wore a jacket she'd sewn out of dental floss. It was stolen by a monkey that sold it to an albatross. And it had the idea to fly. And so the wind swept the whirlpool.
That's really nice, the harmonies. Back comes the condor, chasing the albatross.
There was a swirling mass of water that lived in a quiet pond. It asked permission from its master to visit the lands beyond.
Wow, that was interesting. We're short as well. Yeah, that was a whole box of frogs. That was. Yeah, mad lyrics that were somehow quite endearing. Particularly the harmonies sort of just pulled you in. It's quite cozy sounding. Um, almost like a children's story book or something. Yeah, that that the really high guitar is lovely, and that last extended sort of jam. I was extended, it's only a 3.5 minute song. That last bit, when they were just going for it, there was a lot of reverb on the guitar, and it was chugging away, and I had the sense of that it was almost trying to develop, so sounding less and less like a traditional instrument, becoming more and more electronic sounding. Um, I just had the image that that would be a really good. This would fit into the. I can't even remember it, but like the soundtrack to the original Tron or something like that. And then it struck me right at the end that this actually sounds a bit like. I could be really wrong here, so drop the comments around. But it sounds a bit like sort of the Stuart Copeland stuff they used to do, that sort of film and TV instrumental music. It was always quite frenetic in its pace. Um, and a mixture of those guitars we picked really quickly, or electronic music. Always had a bit of that in it, and then fantastic percussion because these are top drummer. But yeah, sort of kind of reminded me a bit of that. So yeah, this is not what I expected at all. I found it very charming though, very listenable. Yeah, and really enjoyable. Yeah, it's a good shout. This. Let's find out some more about Whirlpool. By Meat Pockets, by getting back and speaking with Andy.
All right, so you've made it out of the whirlpool. What did you make of this track by Meat Puppets, and how was your experience, I guess, compared to your listening of Backwater?
Yeah, it's interesting. It starts off immediately with this very interesting sound. There's this sort of soaring guitar reaching upwards for enlightenment, in the hope that, if achieved, it will come back as a set of panpipes. If this was a bird, it would be Condor, rising and turning in the thermals. I don't know, you're too young to remember this, but there was a terrible film called Condor Man, starring Michael Crawford, who was Frank Spencer, and then Phantom of the Opera, very confusingly. Yeah, really terrible film. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, underneath it's really nice sound. It's interesting because it is, I'm sure, a guitar, but it kind of almost becomes this panpipe type sound, really nice. Underneath it though, you've got it feels quite 80s. So you've got another guitar which is doing sort of almost like an American version of The Edge's finest work on Still What Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. But with the bass working almost like you can see the guitar is kind of like the way it's picked, it's kind of like, inching a lot, not inching along, but sort of stepping along. And it's almost like the bass is putting, when you have a person at a dog show and they do strides and the dog goes in between the strides of the
Yeah.
person. The bass is like doing that with the guitar. And so that's an extra sort of little bump to the whole sound. It's really pleasing. But anyway, your man starts singing and the condor buggers off into the shadows. And you're left with, again, I'm getting this sort of 80s feel to it because the guitar calms down, the picking side of it is still a little bit there, but you've got some more open chords as well. But I'd say the majority of the heavy lifting is being done by this meaty bass and the rhythm section. And the hi-hat in particular keeps
Mm.
banging away, and it keeps the beat slapping, as they say. Um, and then the lyrics are interesting. So I hear something about a swirling mass of water in a quiet pond, and it wants permission from its master to visit the lands beyond. It rhymes. So many questions. So how much swirl is there to this body of water that considers its pond's residents to be deemed quiet? Can't be that much of a swirl. What are the travel permit arrangements for a mass of water? Is it a visa? Who gets to lord it over bodies of water as their master? And is there a training program that I can sign up for this position? These are the sort of some of the questions that pass through my mind. Anyway, this body of water gets its permission, probably some sort of temporary visa that allows it to visit, but not to seek gainful employment. I mean, imagine they're indigenous reservoirs, lakes, and lagoons, so having hard enough at times it is, thank you very much, without some interloper coming along and taking up the good gigs. So it catches the Wind Express and leaps across the sky. As it does this, you sort of got like a verse bit, and then it's almost like it's not a refrain, well, chorus or refrain, but it's done with these harmonies that are really nice. And the vocal melody to that bit, whereas it's going across the sky with the wind, is just again has an old-fashioned feel to it. And then lyrically, it completely loses me. So I get something about a jacket made of dental floss, stolen by a monkey and sold to an albatross. So many questions, but no, I won't. However, I will say this. When are authorities going to crack down on these monkey stroke albatross gangs that traffic dental floss jackets? It's about time someone had the courage to tackle these fuckers. Anyway, I've got off my high hat on that. So we get another couplet with the harmonies as well, and there is the return of the Condor guitar. No doubt chasing off that fucking albatross. The reverb on this guitar really sort of boosts up the 80s feel to me even more. And I got this image, although it's completely wrong, but I couldn't shake it, that it would almost be suited to the soundtrack of like Tron, the original one, not the remake.
Right.
Because it gets to a point where there's so much movement in it, and this soaring guitar and the pick guitar, that it's almost like it's trying to become electronic in the way it's sort of I don't know the feeling to describe it, but it's almost coming in on itself, and really interesting, really, really nice. And then we go back into repeat of that first verse again, and then a couple more turns of those sort of really nice harmony couplets, and then a bit more swirling where it really, really goes for it. And at that point, I'm thinking, it kind of reminded me, and again, I could be wrong, but of Stuart Copeland's sort of instrumental stuff they used to do for film and TV. They always had that sort of frenetic energy to it, either with guitar or keyboard, and then fantastic percussion, because as far as I'm concerned, he's one of the best drummers that have been in the last, God knows how many years. And then the song ends. So yeah, I thought this is really interesting, absolutely fucking bonkers lyrically, but it doesn't really matter to me. I put my notes lyrically opaque. I think on first listen, I preferred the sort of breezy nature of Backwater. It's a bit more immediate, but I suspect with repeated listening, I might like this more. But I can't say until I do.
Yeah,
Because I think the sort of the two instrumental breaks, as it were, because it's not a short song as well. I mean, I also pulled it back about 4 or 5 times when I was reacting, but the two instrumental break bits really sort of, as you know, I like my instrumental parts, and it makes my mind start to wander and do weird things. And yeah, I found myself doing this straight away with the first listen with this. So yeah, it was really interesting.
Awesome. Yeah.
And different again as well. Different.
Yes, it is. And the guitars for me are just like almost hypnotic, the way they move and pull you in. A lot like its namesake, which is kind of like an interesting parallel where I could envision a whirlpool forming listening to the guitar motif in this track. So yeah, glad you liked it. The quick recap of the band, because as mentioned before, we have covered them on the channel. I will link that previous episode in the description field below. If you're curious, please feel free to check it out. But a quick recap of the band. The Meat Puppets are an American rock band formed in January of 1980 in Phoenix, Arizona. The group's lineup consists of Kurt Kirkwood on guitar and vocals, his brother Chris Kirkwood, bass guitar and vocals, and Derek Bostrom on drums. And to date, the band has released 15 studio albums, their most recent being Dusty Notes, which was released in 2019. According to the Chicago Reader, Meat Puppets were part of a crucial group of hardcore bands bucking the conventions of a genre that had become codified. Pitchfork described the Meat Puppets style as warped psychedelic, precisely, there you go, as warped psychedelic country music. This name should ring a bell. Stephen Thomas Erlewine, perhaps you've heard of him, over at All Music described the band's sound as punk rock with strong affection for 60s psychedelia and American roots music, noting that they were one of the first bands on SST Records to drift away from the fractured but muscular punk-oriented sound that had been SST's initial trademark. And I think we talked a bit about SST on this previous episode devoted to Meat Puppets. I think their early label mates were Violent Femmes, if I'm not mistaken, and we had discussed that as well. This particular track is featured on their 7th album, Forbidden Places, which dropped all the way back in 1991. And it was their first release on London Records after their SST kind of days, if you will. Opening with with what Greg Prato described as razor sharp rock on Sam, Forbidden Places explored several styles, including blues on Nail It Down and country on 6 Gallon Pie, and That's How It Goes. The album produced 2 singles, the aforementioned Sam, and this track that we're focused on today, Whirlpool. It's also worth noting that this track features the accomplished Peruvian-American jazz drummer and percussionist Alex Acuna. Acuna has collaborated with such artists as, and strap yourself in, Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, Joni Mitchell, Ella Fitzgerald, Elvis Presley, Whitney Houston, Jackson Brown, Herbie Hancock, Carlos Santana, U2, Beck, Roy Orbison, Diana Ross, and countless other recording artists. So pretty cool that he would collaborate with Meat Puppets, given the other genres and artists of such gravity as the ones that I just mentioned. It's pretty cool shit. I'm sure that they were thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, fucking Elvis and the Big O. I mean, Jesus,
Yeah.
that's enough.
I know. And then there's all those other artists as well. So, All Music's Greg Prato proclaimed Forbidden Places to be one of the band's finest albums, complimenting the album's more country-informed tracks as splendidly showing off the Meat Puppets' cowboy roots. All Music would end up awarding the album 4 out of 5 stars. In August of '91, Greg Kot of the Chicago Tribune praised Forbidden Places, awarding it 3.5 out of 4 stars. Interesting star system. And writing that the band's casual brilliance becomes more dazzling with each play. And maybe you'll find that with this song, as you kind of suggested you might. Other periodicals and outlets like Spin, Alternative Record Guide, the Entertainment Weekly scored the album 8 out of 10 and an A+ respectively. Back in February of '91, Peter Schmoll of Offbeat magazine reviewed the album and had this to say: "This is the Meat Puppets' first major label album, and the first since the collapse of the band's indie label SST. Apparently, the trio emerged creatively unscathed, destined to be forever filed under the alternative section by radio programmers and record stores. Jangly guitar pop, punk thrash, and the slightest hint of country are blended together and topped off with surreal lyrics sung in unique harmony by brothers Kurt and Chris Kirkwood." So, didn't use the term opaque, but I think it's the same sentiment. Let's get into these interesting lyrics while we're on the subject. "There was a swirling mass of water that lived in a quiet pond. It asked permission from its master to visit the lands beyond. And its master allowed it to fly, so the wind swept the whirlpool across the sky. Whirlpool's mother wore a jacket sewn out of dental floss. It was stolen by a monkey that sold it to an albatross. And it had the idea to fly, so the wind swept the whirlpool across the sky." This instrumental break that you were fond of. "There was a swirling mass of water that lived in a quiet pond. It asked permission from its master to visit the lands beyond. And its master allowed it to fly, so the wind swept the whirlpool across the sky. And it had the idea to fly, so the wind swept the whirlpool across the sky." So there you have it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I read somewhere that the song was inspired by some old proverb from an Eastern country. I can't remember which.
I'm gonna say, as you read that, it sounded like almost like a Japanese folktale.
And I don't know if it's that far east, but yeah, like I would say, I think somewhere around India, maybe. Suggestion of monkey might lead me to believe that, but I think I'm correct in that assumption. But I also think that, like old proverbs, there's a metaphor here, right? Of like wanting to leave one's comforts to see the things outside of its known world and to experience things outside of whatever its confines are. In this case, a pond or some body of water that this fraction of wants to go off and explore and venture away from. So I think in that way, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, universal, but I'm sure many people have felt I want to get out of this one horse town. I want to go see the big city. I want to go to this far off country and experience new foods and new cultures or whatever. But there's shades of that to this, and I think that's relatable. I've been there plenty of times in my life, thinking, God, I got to get out of this place. So, yeah, interesting stuff. This was a really, I mean, of all there were plenty of great songs to choose from. So, no shade to any of the other suggestions you threw up, Matt John. Honestly, at the end of the day, it was like, oh, we just did Backwater. Let's do Whirlpool because of the correlation between the name and the swirling kind of guitars. And it's an interesting, musically, really interesting track. So, John, I'm really glad that you liked it, man, and maybe you'll give it some future
Yeah,
listens, and it'll begin to
definitely.
grow even more on you. Matt John, thank you so much for offering up several great tracks, this being one of them. Great shout by you. Everybody out there in the listening audience, let us know what you think of this track by Meat Puppets. It's good to get a little bit of earlier stuff from them on the channel, although this isn't going all the way back in their catalog. This came out before Backwater. So please let us know if there's other tracks by them we should check out. I'm Matt John. I would imagine you've got a laundry list of others that we should peep out. Please feel free to drop them down below. We really do appreciate it. Also, please like, share, and subscribe if you'd be so inclined. We also appreciate that. It helps us with the numbers over here at the channel and gets it out to more people. That brings in more people. We're listening to more music. That's kind of the whole point here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it so much. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.